Happy Halloween, everybody. Welcome to Not Just Any Book Club. You might not be listening to this on Halloween because we're recording it at like 8 p.m. on Halloween. But from our microphones to you, on whatever day this is for you, happy
All
Halloween.
Saints Day probably for you.
Possibly.
Maybe.
So this is Not Just Any Book Club, a show where we talk about books, but we're changing it up this month. Because the Kafka episode was pretty good, we decided, and we all read. There was overlap in what we read because it was so short. We were able to read multiple things. We decided, hey, let's try a month where we all read the same thing. And so this month we read Cujo by Stephen King. We wanted to do a Stephen King month, so we went ahead and just picked Cujo. You got something to say, Justin?
Yeah.
I thought I was leaving the space for you to continue.
Yeah. Cujo is no. By the way, I am Justin, and with me here is also Luke, and I think Pierce already introduced himself, so yeah.
I at least talked for a while. If
you didn't know who it was, his name is Pierce. Cujo is the book that not even Stephen King remembers because he may or may not have had a cocaine addiction while writing this entire thing. He's gone on record saying, I don't remember the writing process of writing this book. I don't remember a thing. And this was one of the first books that I've written myself that I can read without any spoilers. And mind you, Stephen King, master of horror, he's written great fantasy epics called The Dark Tower. He's also written seminal horror short stories, and we decided to read neither of them. We read his most lukewarm, receptive book, but you know what? Even a bad Stephen King novel was still Stephen King, because I, maybe, much to the chagrin of my other two co-hosts, may or may not have had a lesser opinion of the book than I did, because I really liked it.
You phrased that really weird, but yeah, you really liked it. I thought it was okay.
I understand that it's very, very flawed. It's definitely not as...
Nah, I thought it was okay.
Yeah. I think this might be the first time we get to do a plot summary for the book. But what plot summary can we do? It's just two people go into a garage for their car to be fixed, and then a rabid dog that wasn't rabid before goes rabid, and through a series of coincidences, they get stuck. A woman and child are now fighting for their life while a rabid dog is trying to attack them and kill them.
Is it rabid or is it evil is the question. My question, unrelated to the plot of the book, do you guys think Stephen King might have been like, maybe not like outwardly afraid of dogs, but do you think he had like this inner fear of dogs? Because this feels like the only person I'm close to knowing pretty well who has a fear of dogs is my brother's dad, and he is very like violent, like very afraid of dogs. And this book reminded me of something that this is essentially what I think goes through his mind every time he thinks about his child being near a dog. This is what's going to happen, Cujo. It's just a reenactment of what plays out in his mind every time he hears about it.
Well, okay, this book was inspired because of his encounter with the Saint Bernard, because he thought it was going to hurt him, but it didn't. But it still lingered on in his mind. And he also wrote this because I think this was like during the heyday of made-for-TV movies. So he wrote this going, all right, I want this movie to be adapted, and it's going to be like a made-for-TV movie. There's going to be commercial breaks that you can put in, but it's all stripped down. It's just sold on a premise, and it's just the man and woman inside a vehicle and a rabid dog. And I do disagree with your assumption that King is low-key afraid of dogs, because I think that he goes out of his way to make Cujo kind of sympathetic. Like he's a victim of this disease that's rummaging around his mind, rather than, Cujo being an evil dog in general from the get-go. He looks scary, but he is at the very heart of his dog body. He's a kind soul.
I just imagine the dog from Beethoven.
It is, yeah. Same
Like-
Saint
breed.
Bernards have not aged well as a scary dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you,
When-
the movie Beethoven.
When I originally suggested Cujo for the book, I was 100% sure it was a Rottweiler. And that's why I wanted to read it, because I have a Rottweiler. And lo and behold, once I actually read the description after we all agreed to read it, and I found out it was a Saint Bernard.
I I mean, do you like Saint Bernards? What's your favorite breed of dog? I don't have any preferences, but
All right, top 3 off the dome: Rottweilers, Doberman Pinschers, Bernese Mountain Dogs.
I like Huskies, and I mean that's far and away my favorite. But if I had to pick 2 other ones, Rottweilers would probably be up there, and then I really like the idea of a Shiba Inu, but I've never actually had one, so that's not a solidified top 3. I just know my number 1 is Husky, pretty much.
is it because of Aries?
Aries is not a Husky at all.
What? Okay, so as you can kind of tell, I don't know my dog breeds at all. Yeah,
Husky are like fluffy white dogs, white and gray. Usually.
If you want to see more of him, you can check us out on twitch.tv/notjustanarbg, where we have an Aries cam.
Yeah, and he's not a Husky at all. You'll see how little Justin knows his
Alright,
dog breeds.
I am gonna use my mechanical keyboard. Husky. That is definitely not Aries. So, yeah.
I did have to do a double take when you said that, Justin.
Okay. Well, Huskies are the stuff, or the dogs from The Thing, I think, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
There are other dogs that look like that. There's like Alaskan Malamutes, but usually Huskies are the sled pullers, the work dogs in the north. So,
See,
or at least they're depicted as such. I believe the other ones also work, but they're usually the popular depictions.
See, while I was reading this book, I purposely, intentionally did not look up what a Saint Bernard dog. So I just imagined like this giant wolf thing that was just like rabid from the get go, because that's what's been popularized out in the media. So
And it's just Beethoven. It's just
yeah,
running around.
So there you go. So the book was 10 times scarier in my mind because I had no idea what a Saint Bernard looked like. So maybe that's why I liked it more than you guys. Yeah. Do you know where the name Cujo comes from?
No.
I think you started to tell me one time, and then you were like, "I'll save it for the podcast."
I don't think I said that because I just looked it up on Wikipedia, and
All right, never
apparently
mind.
it was like the alias, the alias of Willie Wolf, the guy that if you know who Patty Hearst is, he's also the guy that inspired Citizen Kane. That he basically tried to I think they even reference this in the book where it was they ask why is this dog named after someone from the Symbionese Liberation Army, or the SLA. Don't know much about them, but I remember trying to look them up, and they were interesting people. They were declared a terrorist group by the FBI, or a domestic terrorist group. So I have no idea why Stephen King wanted to make that connection, but there we go. And yeah, so yeah, I don't have any more back. Oh, actually, apparently, before we actually dive in the book, apparently this book is a sequel of some sorts, because this was the first attempt of Stephen King to actually build a shared universe, and obviously this book takes place in Castle Rock, and the book before this, they talk about Frank Dobbs, or I think, like, the book suggests that there's a spirit in Todd's closet that was the ghost of Frank Dodd, who was like a serial killer, and he makes no reference to it ever again. And I kind of just shrugged it off. But then, once you actually did some research into it, apparently Frank Dodd was like a serial killer from the previous book, The Dead Zone, who was like killed. Well, kind of spoiler alert, but if you kind of read the first like 10 pages of the book, it's kind of spoiled retroactively. And apparently, there's a character from the Dead Zone, like the police officer, named George Bannerman, who just gets killed unceremoniously by Cujo because yeah, he was like a supporting protagonist or something. So that's one way to close off your character arc, just killing him off screen in another book. So yeah, now let's discuss our thoughts and feelings about Cujo. Mind you, this is not nowhere near considered to be King's best work, but I thought it was good. Um, I liked it more than you guys because that ending. King is infamous for his really bad rushed endings, but here, I feel like it was just pure nihilism because he actually goes for the jugular vein. He does the thing that didn't expect him to do, which is kill off the child, and he did it in a very tasteful way because I thought it was very tasteful, as in they developed the character. He doesn't do it for shock factor and feels very, very natural. But before that, what do you guys think? If you guys want to go in more depth.
Well, I mean, the reason that I didn't like it is the reason that I didn't think that I was going to like much of Stephen King's work, which is that it's very plot heavy and not very heavy in other things. Um, uh, so like I really like. I mean, Luke also really likes Hemingway, but I really like Hemingway because he tells you what's happening and then you're able to think about it and you pull what you need and what you can from it. But there is that deeper level to it. With this, it didn't feel like there was as much. The one thing that I pulled from it on a deeper, more thoughtful level was that I thought it was an interesting kind of like. Obviously, I'm not a parent, but it feels like what the way that parents think like things are going to happen to their children, like a series of coincidences is going to happen that's going to lead to them getting like killed by a rabid dog or
Yeah.
something like that. Um, it really feels like that to me. That was the main thing that I kind of
Yeah.
pulled pulled from it at a deeper level. Doesn't really feel like there's that much more to it. There might be some stuff that I missed or just didn't think about enough, but I don't know. To me, it wasn't as engaging because for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you can.
Uh, so yeah, I just want to say that yeah, me and Pierce both like Hemingway, although I feel like we like him for different reasons.
Yes.
I am not the guy who will read a book and try to pick apart deeper meanings and try to find some like subtext. That whole iceberg theory thing I had no idea existed. I
Oh,
just kind of read a story and I kind of either like it or I don't. So I guess I'm pretty plot heavy. If I'm just like get sucked into what's going on, I don't really care that much about writing style
Luke
or
reads
grammar.
Hemingway and he's like, "Oh man, big fish. He's gonna get that big fish. Oh
Yeah.
boy."
Oh man, this guy is running away from the Italian army. Let's go. Um, and so that's why I thought I'd like the like a horror novel like Stephen King's book a lot more. Justin hyped it up. He read it first, and he
like
was talking about how suspenseful it was, and I was so hype. I was excited, and then I read it, and I was just like, well, I didn't
okay.
feel like it was a whole lot special. Yeah, there was nothing really I could really relate to, and
Did you?
especially which is funny because I had a big fear of big dogs as a kid.
Same
Because
here.
yeah, my neighbor had a Rottweiler that wanted to eat my face off every time he saw me.
Rottweiler.
Yeah,
And now you
big
have a
evil
Rottweiler.
Rottweiler. Yeah, yeah,
That's
exactly. I have that
ironic.
dog, and now I don't not scared of them anymore. But yeah, growing up, and I thought like, oh yeah, this would totally make me remember that. And
It didn't.
nah, I really didn't, man, because the dog was like crazy, you know? It didn't feel like a mean dog. It felt like a crazy dog. And I never ran into a rabid, crazy dog. I ran into
That's
dogs that
interesting.
just didn't like me. And I didn't get the vibe from that thing. It just felt like the dog was crazy.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
reason that I brought up is is maybe Stephen King is or was afraid of dogs at one point, is because I feel like people who are afraid of dogs can't differentiate between those two things. They find it hard. They have a hard time differentiating between dogs who are crazy and dogs who are just mean for some reason, for one reason or another, because they don't like them or whatever reason it might be.
mm.
Um, so I guess what I'm kind of saying is like maybe Stephen King at one point felt maybe he didn't feel that way during the writing of this, but maybe at one point he felt like that, and he um I had it.
It is sad.
Um,
You got over it? I don't know.
yeah, and he got over it. Maybe that's the point. Like that this dog isn't necessarily, but also like I don't know. So to me, something about it just felt like what I imagine goes through the heads of people who are afraid of dogs.
Yeah, I guess that is an interesting way of manifesting fear. I used to just be afraid of dogs, but hey, Zach's dog kind of warmed my heart to it, so I'm like, okay, I'm not afraid of dogs anymore. Or I wasn't afraid, like deathly afraid, just very uncomfortable. But stick me with the dog any day,
Yeah,
and
Zach's dog is crazy in like a playful way.
and he warmed my heart, or he,
She
she.
she ammo.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about Zach, you can check him out at twitch.tv/scrubby. Just thought I'd throw that out there. But yeah, how do you guys think about all those subplots in Cujo? The thing that just made this a 309-page novel, because that was there was a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I am a bit of a fan of drama,
So
and
am I.
yeah, I'm a little bit of a fan of that. Not my proudest admittance, but I was kind of a fan. Like, the guy was cheating, the abusive husband, yada yada. I don't know. I thought it was
Didn't like that really long passage where it was just the guy talking about red cereal, the history of just like
yeah, that part, the whole cereal problem. You kind of lost me on that one.
I have no. He was really dedicated to just explain the history about the red raspberry zingers. I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, you are really committing to explaining what went wrong here. Uh, but some subplots are better than others. I did not really care for the one with the little kid with Charity and Brett after winning the lottery. Um, it was just something that didn't feel necessary, very distracting from the novel because like they don't appear, they're not directly related to what's happening, and I don't think they directly lead to what's happening in with Cujo and the two people. I can't remember the name, but the mother and son. Um,
Yeah,
they're just talking about the lottery winnings and how awful her husband is or something.
yeah. Real quick for me, I have ADHD, so unless that kind of thing is really engaging, it can pull me out. When it's done really well, I really like it. So I kind of wish I didn't have ADHD so I could try and enjoy it a little bit more. But when I've seen it done well, I really enjoy that kind of thing. I didn't enjoy it as much here.
Yeah,
Um, but also the reason why I said really quick, I'll say this is because I kind of remembered the direction I was going when I was talking about why this reminded me of people who are afraid. Um, because the dog gets rabies unbeknownst to anybody, pretty much
yeah.
like on its own. It's like running through a field and gets bitten and stuff. Um, that to me is it's like the dog just to the characters, the dog just kind of like snaps, if you know what I mean. Like it just goes crazy one day.
I think it was a bit slower than that because we saw like he was hesitant to kill Tad and what was the woman's
Yes,
name?
but I just mean like to the people, it's not as easy to because we have the inciting incident and then we're looking for change as it comes.
Hmm.
To these people, this dog was just getting like worse randomly. Um, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
okay, what is it? Was it Brett that was like, "Hey, I think Cujo's sick," and then everyone was like, "Nah,
Yeah.
don't worry about it."
Cujo's cool. He's
Yeah,
fine.
no.
Look at him.
He may
He's
have he's
he's
foaming at the mouth, but he's
he looks
okay.
like Beethoven. Look at him.
Yeah. So yeah. Then Charity and Brett. I kind of along the way, I kind of forgot that how they were related the to the book because I'm just like, oh, Brett kind of just mentions Cujo a couple times, but like, there's not really much towards relation towards Joe, and Joe's dead, so there's not really much to it in general. But the the pleasure trip and like in Boston, the parts with in Boston when they're talking about cereal, I just really wish it was more thematically connected because I think the thematic crux of this novel is just really bad coincidences, just like basically just leading to the death of a child, or basically like was it with the mail being canceled on to be delivered to the house.
So kind of what I was saying.
Yeah, it was exactly what you're saying.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I just proved Pierce right. I I did find it a little bit too cosmic, but in a way, I think that King kind of justifies it with like winning the lottery first because no one ever wins the lottery, and it just like kind of like it starts a cascade. Just people randomly not calling people, thinking they're fine. It's just like things that seem natural and how these coincidences build up to unfortunately just lead up to a tragedy. It's like a snowball effect in a way.
Right. Listen, all I'm gonna say is I don't know. I just feel really good about my one interpretation that I pulled. That's the kind of thing that a parent does, right? They think like, oh well, this could happen here, and that one incident, sure, yeah, and then they think about the worst possible outcome and how to get there. It's like you think of the worst possible outcome and for your child, right? And then you think what would have to happen at every single event for that to happen. And if there is like a possibility, no matter how unlikely, of that coincidentally happening at every single like crossroads to get to that worst possible point, a parent would be like upset just because it's possible that it gets there.
Yeah, it's the worst timeline for them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Donna, the mother character, I really enjoyed her. Just the way that she basically put her child first, and like could have been out of there, but it would have put Tad in danger. And I'm just like, oh, what a good person. She just she thinks about other people instead of herself, and I was like, kind of yeah, like you said, it appeals to the parent child instinct, and I thought that really resonated with me in a way that kind of made me respect this book more. Just like, oh, it adds another layer of stakes to it. Because like it's just a hint of irony where the Cujo is sleeping, she could easily run, but leaving Tad alone, that's not possible. Um, yeah. And by the way, Steve Kemp, with the guy that we kind of didn't talk about, the really evil tennis player who was just so one dimensional and an awful human being that Donna's cheating with. Um, I some people have tried to draw connections towards him and the author himself, Stephen King, because Steve Kemp, what does that sound like? Kind of sounds like Steve King. Who else is 6'5" and has a really black beard? Also Steve Kemp. And I feel like this is Stephen King's way of just like kind of criticizing himself from in a different character, because like obviously I don't know how much Stephen King likes tennis, but I have a feeling that he went through a period of self-loathing with cocaine, and he just really wanted to go. Here's this guy that's like me. Let's go make him the most awful human being.
Do you think he may have trashed somebody's house who broke off some kind of a relationship with him?
I don't think that far. Yeah, I was really surprised like how far he went, especially the surprise that he left on the bed. I was like, wow, Stephen King is really going for that. ah, um, but yeah, um, I don't know why. I mean, you guys can draw conclusions as to why he's named SK or Steve K. I don't know why, but I definitely think this is just him self-inserting himself to be just this terrible human being. Draw your own conclusions for that. Um, I definitely think that he's in there. Um, do you guys have anything else interesting to say before I get to like the ending of this?
Not with the side plots. I think I already said which ones I thought were interesting. Everything else kind of was forgettable or actively annoying.
It, yeah, I do feel that. By the way, what do you think about like the way that was written without like chapter headings or like it switches to the perspective in a way? Did it like increase attention? Did it just make it more annoying to read?
I didn't notice.
Yeah. And I didn't really notice either. I think if it's done really well, I take notice of it, and if obviously if it's done really poorly, I think this was okay.
See, I think the opposite because I always need. Do you guys stop reading in the middle of a chapter?
No, not
What?
typically.
Sometimes.
Sometimes
If
I
I'm going
do.
to bed and I'm like dead tired, I'll just say, okay, I'm tired of this.
Okay,
Yeah.
all
But
right.
usually I just finish a chapter and then.
Yeah, I'm a chapter
Somet-
guys.
Sometimes I'll try and stay up like later than I intend to just to finish the chapter, so that way I can stop in the middle of a chapter or not
Yeah,
stop in the middle of a chapter rather.
yeah, yeah. That is generally how I roll. Obviously, if there's like a break in the chapter, then it's okay to stop there. So surprised you guys didn't notice though, because like, oh, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go stop at this chapter. Wait, there are no chapters. Oh no, what do I do? Um, but yeah, but okay. So what did you guys think of the ending? Because interestingly enough, Stephen King, when the movie was adapted in the 1980s, in 1984, 1980, I don't know when the movie was released, but basically when the movie was released, they changed the ending specifically not to kill off Tad, because he was like, because like the way that it happened in the book, I really commend him for it. I said in the beginning of this podcast, I commend him for killing off Tad in a very tasteful manner, because it goes full nihilism. Because like, oh, they are about to get saved, but even Donna was like, "Yeah, I saved my child. Let's go, boys." But then once you look, once I Vic or I forget, Vic looks into the car and just sees his child's corpse. He just breaks down, and everybody just like is in a really crappy mood after seeing that happen. And yeah, I just appreciate how far they went with it, because once you kill off, because there's an unwritten rule in horror where you're not supposed to kill off the child, because it just kind of breaches the trust for the audience, where it's like, oh, you could do this now. It hits too close to home. And here, when I first read it, I was like stunned. I was looking at my Kindle, just like rereading this, and it's like, no, that didn't happen. My heart broke, because like I recently worked with children. If I hear or see a child die or get hurt, it just greatly upsets me. But I think King did it well. What do you guys think? Did you guys Was that the straw that broke her back? Or
Okay, so this is gonna sound terrible of me, but
oh no.
I wanted to hear Luke's
I get
answer.
kind of excited when like stuff like the kid dies in the horror story.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like you
They
know
have
it could
balls.
happen, but it never really does. And then when it does happen, you're like, "Oh yeah, nice." So I wasn't that sad, but yeah, but I thought it was a fun addition at the end.
Yeah. It's definitely respectable, even though I didn't particularly like love the rest of the book. It's respectable to go through with it. Because not many people do. And you said they changed it in the movie? I haven't seen
Yeah,
the
where
movie.
Tad lives. I hadn't seen the movie either, but I've seen on record that Tad is. But Stephen King goes, yeah, Tad lived. I would have written it that way if I wasn't high off cocaine.
Really? That's
Yeah,
funny. Wow. Okay.
yeah,
So he author's intention honestly probably wasn't even that that Tad dies.
It was the cocaine speaking.
Yeah.
um,
Do you think the cereal was the cocaine speaking as well? They call it the tangents were the drugs. Is that the excuse we'll use for it?
maybe. Actually, okay. Stephen King's addictions. He's been very open about this, and through like
Hmm.
the villains in his literature, which The Shining, like we've discussed before, but The Shining was basically like a metaphor for just like, oh, him getting it's basically just ruining his family. His addiction is just like crippling his debts and all that, and it makes him feel isolated. And then Kubrick was like, nah, let's make this a ghost story. Okay. Misery. Misery is just about his cocaine addiction and basically the woman killer thing. I've
Yeah.
seen Kathy
Ku-
Bates.
Ku- Kubrick like sorry, I was reading about this earlier. Kubrick kind of like reversed it, right?
Yeah,
It was like isolation leads to this instead of this leads to isolation.
yeah, uh, yeah. And then Misery is just a very one for one for about cocaine addiction, where Kathy Bates, who kidnaps the author, forces him to write against his will, or else he threatens to kill him. That's also a metaphor for cocaine. Here, I really don't want to say that Cujo is a metaphor for cocaine, but like, if you want to, if you want to say it, go right ahead. Um, but yeah, it's I feel like King's cocaine like pessimism or his nihilism persuades kind of permeates through the novel because like you see some like Chekhov's gun just never being fired, like the monster words that Tad writes. I forgot what they were, but like he writes them like to ward off spirits, and then it's brought out throughout the book, and I think King is just like intending for it to be like this cheesy thing that like somehow wards off Cujo in some capacity. But Ted dies, and once his father sees it, he just kind of tears it up, saying, these monster words did not work. So very unfortunate, but it was done with respect. Uh, Cujo is beheaded, and I think I don't think there's a funeral scene, but they Tad dies of dehydration. I'm just reading over the Wikipedia page. Don is rushed to hospital, and then Cujo's cremated, and then I really liked how it kind of brings like the epilogue that happens with Donna is like treated for rabies, and then he kind of reunites with Vic over it, like grieving this lost child. And then Charity is not scared of dogs, and Brett isn't either, and kind of gives him a new dog, as in to show like, oh, it didn't really happen. Not that it didn't happen. It's like we can move on from this tragedy. And then also at the end, it's just like the narrator reminds that Cujo was a victim of circumstance and of rabies instead of just being an evil dog. Um, I kind of like how bleak it was, but with a kind of a bittersweet ending, as in like life goes on.
I also think if we're gonna real quick about the cocaine metaphor, cocaine might have been or the rabies might have been the cocaine metaphor. In a way. Uh so I was just reading over the Wikipedia article with you as you were reading it. I was looking at it, and it was stressed at the end of the book how Cujo was a reading off the Wikipedia page a good dog who always tried to keep his owners happy, but the ravage of rabies drove him to violence. And that alongside what again I haven't read the book The Shining, but along what Jack Nicholson was supposedly, from what I've heard from other people, uh, it's like Cujo is a thing trying to do good by his family, even though he's a dog,
Mhm.
and then a fun experience that
Go for a
he's
rabbit.
doing, chasing after a rabbit, leads to a terrible bad side effect that harms other people.
Yeah, that sounds like it was it. I mean, yeah, you could read into that. I think that King is a little. I'm not to shoot down your metaphor because on surface level you can read it as right. I think King is a more sophisticated writer than to have such a surface level metaphor. Sorry to rain on your parade.
Wow.
I
Wow.
know. Yeah. Um,
The plot man can't have simple metaphors when he doesn't even remember writing the book.
Yeah. Yeah. That is all I have to say. It's not. Yeah, it sounds like you guys don't love it. I really enjoyed it. I didn't love it up until the very end. I was like, oh, he went there. He paid respect to it, to what he was going to do, and he did it. Which I respect him for. Again, don't let this be. Don't let this be your Rolling King book. He's written better. I even like Carrie better, even though Carrie is a little bit problematic, as in it's not that great. But I think Carrie's a little bit better. I think Cujo is the better written book, but Carrie is the better book in general. Um, I have also read The Green Mile. I think you might really enjoy that because it's very, very, very character focused. And the books that were supposed to, the other options we were supposed to read were really long, like
Yeah.
ridiculously long. That's maybe the reason why we kind of chose Cujo, because it was only 309 pages. So
It was only
only.
the length of a normal novel.
Yeah. I plan on reading more Stephen King. I feel like I am very accustomed to his writing style. Maybe you might like The Dark Tower, Pierce, because it's this fantasy epic. Even though the first book is but the second book on is just super.
I'll probably try him again at some point. He's too famous not to. I said he was one of the big 3 of horror, and it's true. So, little too unavoidable, I think, to not try him at least one. Try him at least 1 or 2 more times.
Especially when he chose his least acclaimed novel, or one of his least acclaimed novels.
Yeah.
You can try those short stories, which I suggested you guys read, but we just never went through with it. The Jaunt, which is one of my favorite horror short stories ever. It's really great. It's also by Stephen King, so go for that. Luke, do you have anything closing thoughts as to what you thought about Cujo?
It was all right. If I'm just kind of like Pierce, if I ever find myself in curious about another King book, I mean, I won't avoid it.
Yeah.
But you won't go for it.
Nah, I'm not actively looking for more King books to read now.
If I'm like at Half Price Books and I'm looking through the shelves and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, Stephen King, maybe I'll pick it up.
Oh boy. Okay. I don't know.
No, I'll probably actively seek out a Stephen King book at some point. It's not going to be anytime soon. I'll take a while and read some more stuff that I'm more interested in reading first, but I'll come back to it.
Because I just want to say, King is greatly influenced by Lovecraft. So
yeah, I know that. Lots of people were greatly influenced by Lovecraft.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to sway you on Steve King. It's like
there were lots of people who were greatly influenced by Lovecraft who actually wrote cosmic horror. So, I mean, technically, you could say it is technically cosmic horror, but it's kind of its own thing, really. But whatever. Point is, like it's not exactly his stuff is from what I've heard about the stuff that is Lovecraftian is it's not he like does his own thing with it. It's not like super Lovecraftian.
Yeah, no, it's not the Cthulhu mythos exactly, but it's like Lovecraftian-esque.
Yeah.
Esque as in, I don't know. Basically, don't let it stop you.
All right. Sounds like a good stopping point. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed, please give us a like or a rating or whatever it is on whatever platform you listen on. You can find us on Twitter at NotJustAnyPod. There you'll find information on this podcast as well as our other podcast, Not Just Any RPG, which you can find on YouTube, Spotify, or YouTube, the podcasting platform you're listening on right now, whatever that is, as well as twitch.tv at twitch.tv/NotJustAnyRPG. We stream that show at 8 p.m. Eastern every Friday. And next month, I should announce real quick. Before,
Yeah.
Last thing, next month we will be reading. We wanted to keep it nice and simple. Political commentary, pretty much. November is for those of you overseas. November is the month that we Americans typically have elections, so we went for a political topic, and we will be watching and doing recording an episode on Hamilton for the bookends.
The show not about
the show
books.
not about books. That show. So that's what we'll be doing next month. Please don't be afraid, because this is a Halloween special, to join us for that. That's about it.
Goodbye, Prometheus.
All right.